Impeaching federal judges. It's a hot topic right now, but it needs some context. You need to understand the facts, and you need to understand how unrealistic it is. So in case you didn't know, President Trump has been calling the federal judge who temporarily ruled against him in the case involving those deportation flights over the weekend a ton of names, and he said that that judge should be impeached. Here are just some of his recent posts about it on social media. Now, let's start with some context here. There absolutely is a mechanism in the United States Constitution to impeach federal judges. You may or may not know this, but once a federal judge is confirmed by the Senate, that federal judge serves for life. The reason why the Founding Fathers set it up that way is to ensure that judges are free from political pressure and free from public opinion when making their legal decisions. So I'm sure you're thinking, well, if a federal judge sits on the bench for life, how do we get rid of them if they turn out to be bad or they turn out to be corrupt? Well, there's a process for that in the Constitution too. It says in Article 3, Section 1, the judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their office during good behavior. That good behavior phrase has been legally interpreted to mean for life as long as they don't violate the law. Then in Article 2, Section 4, it says the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Federal judges would be considered civil officers of the United States. So if a federal judge has committed an impeachable offense to include treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors, that would make that judge eligible for impeachment proceedings. Now, if there is some kind of evidence that any of that has occurred, the Constitution says the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment. That means a House member would file these articles of impeachment. Then there's an internal process through the House, through the committees. And then if it gets that far, there would be a vote of the full House to impeach. That vote would only require a simple majority to impeach that judge in the House. But even if that happens, that does not mean the judge is removed from office that day. Oh no. The Constitution says there must be a trial conducted in the United States Senate of that official who has been impeached by the House, and senators basically serve as jurors in that trial. In order to convict a judge of impeachment, the Constitution says 2/3 of the Senate would need to vote yes. That means if all 100 senators are present, they would need 67 yes votes. Republicans today have 53 Senate members, so even if they all voted yes, which is definitely not a guarantee, they would still need 14 Senate Democrats to convict, and that for sure is not going to happen. So just based on the numbers alone, the reality of this particular judge being convicted of impeachment is slim to none. Now, a little more context for you here. Let's talk about President Trump's call for impeachment of this particular judge. Based on the president's track record with the legal system, this is what he does pretty typically when he loses. This is a fact. This is not an opinion. He has actually done this for years. It's not a new behavior. When a judge rules against him or he loses a case, Trump will often say the judge or maybe even the jury is biased against him or is radical or has Trump derangement syndrome or something to that effect. But when a judge rules in his favor, like the federal judge in Florida who dismissed his federal classified documents case, he treats those judges very differently.
We had an amazing judge in Florida, and her name is Eileen Cannon, and I didn't know her. I still don't know her. I don't believe I ever spoke to her, even during the trial, but I did appoint her. Actually, she was brilliant. She moved quickly. She was the absolute model of what a judge should be.
As I have reported for years, federal judges have, for decades, stopped the policies of the executive branch. These types of rulings are not exclusively saved for President Trump. He isn't the only one. President Biden, President Obama, both have had major parts of their agendas either slowed down or blocked completely by the courts. Most of the time, it happened in conservative-leaning federal courts. This is the process. The fact is, our Constitution has set up a separation of powers, and that is by design, so that power is never consolidated in one specific branch of government. Remember, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. The executive branch is not all powerful. The legislative and the judicial branches have just as much power. And it's up to the judicial branch to interpret laws and determine whether those laws and the use of those laws by individuals in power is constitutional or not. The fact is, the judicial branch can absolutely check the executive branch. It's also a fact that in every single case, I don't care which one it is, someone wins and someone loses. No one wins all the time. And when you lose, there is a process set up in our Constitution to have your loss reviewed. That is how the system works. In fact, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, a conservative, reminded the world and the President of the United States just yesterday that when you lose, whether you like it or not, you don't tear down the process, you work your way through the process. Roberts said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose.